Hola, en este video vamos a hablar de qué hace una familia. Y el objetivo aquí es hablar de qué haces tú con tu familia. Entonces yo quiero describir las acciones que yo hago con mi familia y las acciones que hace mi familia. Vamos a empezar con un poco de repaso. Vamos a repasar los verbos hacer y los verbos ar, er, ir. Bueno, primero, el verbo hacer significa to do or to make. Yo hago, tú haces, él, ella hace, usted hace, nosotros hacemos, ellos, ellas hacen, ustedes hacen. Now you'll notice this verb hacer in the yo form has hago with the go instead of just the o or haco. You'll see another verb like that in just a minute, but it's important to remember it's a little bit different in the yo form. This is called a go verb. So in the question, this verb hacer would mean, what does a family do? ¿Qué hace una familia? And we can answer that in a lot of different ways, and we're going to look at that question specifically today. Now, before we look at the different ways to answer that question, let's look at a few different verbs, a few new verbs that will help us out, as well as a few new words that can help us answer that question and talk about what our family does and likes to do. Los verbos nuevos. Visitar. Visitar significa to visit. That's a cognate. For example, you might go visit family in another town. You might go visit your grandma in maybe a nursing home, or you may go visit a brother or sister that's at college. Próximo, viajar. Viajar. Viajar significa to travel. A lot of families like to travel together. They may take trips, take vacations, or maybe, again, travel to see relatives. Próximo, el verbo cenar. Cenar. Cenar significa to eat dinner. And you may recognize here the root. You may have seen this word already. Cena, la cena. And that is dinner. So cenar, to eat dinner. Some families, they like to eat dinner together when possible. Some families maybe don't eat dinner together as often. So maybe you would talk about not eating dinner with your family in some occasions. Próximo, tenemos el verbo salir. Salir. Y salir significa to leave or to go out. And I want you to notice here that this is a little bit different ending. It has the IR ending. And we're going to look at how that one is conjugated here in just a moment. Bueno, unas palabras nuevas. Algo, algo. Y algo significa something. This is just one of those random words that we can use to kind of help our sentences be more descriptive and talk about various different things. Próximo, tenemos casi. Casi. Y casi significa almost. You might hear this word with the word siempre followed by it, and that might be casi siempre, almost always. Maybe an activity that you almost always do with your family. Y al final tenemos viaje. Viaje. Y un viaje is travel or a trip. And that's a noun that you might use, again, when talking about something that your family does. We take a trip, for example. Okay, so those are some new verbs and some new words that you can use to help talk about what your family does together. Before we go any further, we want to make sure that we have our conjugations of the various different verbs down so we can use those to talk in sentences about what we do with our family. Let's take a look at verbos ar. Verbos ar, and those are verbs that end the last two letters with ar. Let's take a look at our new verb visitar, que significa to visit. You'll remember that we have certain endings that go specifically with ar verbs, and you'll see has the a in each of them. So the yo is the o, tú has, él, ella, usted ha, nosotros hamos, ellos, ellas, ustedes han. So in this case it would be yo visito, tú visitas, él, ella, usted visita, nosotros visitamos, ellos, ellas, ustedes visitan. You'll remember that we get rid of the AR, we drop it off and replace it with the correct ending. And that's for AR verbs. Now let's take a look at verbos ER, ER and IR verbs. And let's take a look at our new verb salir. Now you'll notice it has an IR ending, and we'll make sure we look at that in contrast with ER endings. Now salir is like the verb hacer in that the yo form, we have the go. This is another go verb. Yo salgo. Yo salgo. Salo doesn't work. Okay, pronunciation here tells us that we need to say salgo. Everything else, though, is a typical IR verb. Tú sales, él, ella, usted sale, nosotros salimos with an I, because this is an IR verb, and you can see that right there. That tells you that it is going to use the I ending just in the nosotros. Everything else will have an E. And then ellos, ellas, ustedes salen with an EN. Now if this were an ER verb, maybe let's use the verb comer, right? ER verb as an example. That would be comemos. Comemos with an E in the nosotros. Please excuse the very childlike handwriting. Pretty bad here, but comemos actually would be our case. Okay, so those are the two endings. Keep that in mind when you're talking about things that you and your family might do. Depending on who is doing the action, make sure you give the correct ending for the correct verb. And if you have any questions, you can refer to my other videos on AR verbs or any other video you might find online that talks about conjugating verbs. Okay, so let's look at those preguntas comunes in regards to the question, what does your family do? And the main question is, ¿qué hace tu familia? What does your family do? Otra pregunta, ¿qué haces con tu familia? A little bit of a variation on that question. ¿Qué hacen ustedes juntos? ¿Qué hacen ustedes? What do you all do? What do you all do together? So this would be someone's asking you and your family together, talking to all of you at the same time. In this case, you would respond with the nosotros. Right? What do you all do? We do whatever. Okay, so keep that in mind. And finally, ustedes hacen algo during some sort of time period. Do you all do something in the summer, in September, on Labor Day, on the weekends, for example? And again, we have the ustedes here, so we would respond in the nosotros. So just some variations, more or less on the same question. What does your family do? What do you do with your family? What do you all do together? And do you all do something during a specific time period? So I want you to keep those questions in mind, and we're going to look at how to answer each one specifically and go over a couple of possible examples. But you are free here to really use any action that you want. You do not have to use the verb hacer in your response. In fact, most of the time you will not. Because you wouldn't want to say something like, we make dinner together. Well, that doesn't make sense. You can drop the we do and you can just say, we make or prepare dinner together. You wouldn't say, we do play in the yard, right? You would say, we play sports in the yard. So keep that in mind. You will not always use the verb hacer in your response. Most of the time you won't. So let's start by looking at the first question, ¿Qué hace tu familia? On the left are some verbos importantes that you can use as a reminder to talk about the, various different things that your family might do. Okay, so the first question, ¿Qué hace tu familia? What does your family do? Now here in this case, la familia or tu familia is the subject. Okay, so that is going to be an it. It's a singular thing, one group of people. So that is going to be the verb that we want to use, hace. It does. Now we're going to pick one of those verbs on the list, or we're going to maybe choose another different verb and answer that question. But we want to make sure we conjugate or change our verb to show that it is doing the action. Okay, so la pregunta, ¿Qué hace tu familia? A possible response, mi familia cena a las 6 de la tarde. My family, it eats dinner. Notice we've conjugated it so that it's in the it form because my family is the subject. Mi familia cena a las 6 de la tarde. My family eats dinner at 6 in the afternoon. Right, and this is just about the evening, really, especially in the summertime, sun is still up. We might consider that afternoon. But the idea is the same. What does your family do? My family eats dinner at 6 in the afternoon. Another possible response. Mi familia casi siempre mira la tele por la noche. My family almost always watches television at night. And again, you'll take a look. Our verb is conjugated to show that the family is the one doing the action. So just a couple of examples here and using that new word casi. Let's take a look at another question. ¿Qué haces con tu familia? Now this question is just a little bit different, not asking what your family does, but asking what you do with your family. So since the question is directed at you, you're going to respond talking about yourself and something you do with your family. Con. A possible response. Yo preparo la cena con mi familia. And notice you're talking about yourself here. Another possible response. And this one is actually going to use the verb hacer in your response. You can see what that looks like. ¿Qué haces con tu familia? Yo nunca hago ejercicio con mi familia. Notice how I use the go verb here, since hacer is a go verb. And I actually want to use the verb hacer because I'm talking about doing exercise. So I never do exercise, or I never exercise with my family. And let's look at one more of our questions, and then you'll get a chance to try a few on your own. And let's look at the question, ¿Ustedes hacen algo during a time frame? So this is the one, do you all do something during a time frame? So this is where you are going to respond in the nosotros form because you are being asked to yourself and the rest of your family at the same time. So let's change our question just a little bit. ¿Ustedes hacen algo en el verano? Sí, nosotros viajamos. You'll notice we're in the nosotros form with the nosotros ending using one of our new verbs, viajamos. Yes, we all travel. And we could even say, sí, nosotros viajamos juntos. We all travel together. Just a possible response. Another response, ¿Ustedes hacen algo en el verano? No, no hacemos nada. We don't do anything. And this is a possible response. Maybe you don't do anything with your family. And again, we are actually going to use the verb hacer here because we want to say we don't do anything. Okay, so now we have an idea of how to answer that question or multiple different questions about what your family does together. So let's take a look at a few possible questions and scenarios. You're going to get a picture, and I want you to answer the question based off what you see in the picture that you and your family might do together. Okay, so based off the question and the picture that's given, try and use one of the verbs on the left to answer the question and make sure you conjugate it in the correct form based on the question that's being asked. Número 1. ¿Qué haces con tu familia? So hopefully you're writing this down right now, possible answer to this, and you'll check afterwards and there are multiple options. So let's see what we came up with. A possible response might be, Yo visito a mi abuela con mi familia. I visit my grandma with my family. Again, there are other options here, so you could have come up with something different. But you might have something similar, maybe just in a different word order here. A possibility for you. Número 2. ¿Qué hacen ustedes juntos? A possible response might be, Nosotros descansamos en el parque. You may have come up with something else too, like nosotros vamos al parque, nosotros jugamos en el parque, nosotros visitamos el parque. Lots of different responses here. Most important thing is that you get this in the correct form, nosotros, with the amos, imos, or emos ending, depending on which verb you used. Okay, let's try one more practice question here. Y al final, ¿qué hace tu familia cuando nieva? Little hint here, use the verb salir, to leave or to go out, and that might help you out a little bit. Y una respuesta. Mi familia sale de la casa para jugar. Could have just said, mi familia sale de la casa. My family leaves the house. Either way is fine, as long as you have the verb in the right form. Notice family is the subject here, so we want to make sure we have it in the it form. Okay, that's it for this video here. If you want to talk about your family, follow these responses, these questions. And if you have any questions, just watch the video over again or get a hold of me and let me know. Ciao.